All right, so since having these bookshelves, which got set up, which rather I set up at the beginning of June, I've had quite a few requests, English, to do a bookshelf tour. So that's what I'm doing. No fancy lighting, no microphones, nothing. We're just gonna go for it, you know, casually. So let's dive in. I'm gonna try to make this quick. I'm not gonna go over every single book. I'm just gonna maybe highlight what I have on my shelves, and you can always leave questions, I think, in the comments below. So yeah. All right, let's start with this shelf that you don't see in my videos. This actually used to store all of my yarn here. As you can see, I have this is a ring light. I have some of my large knitting needles here. I'm telling you, this is casual. I don't even have this, I'm just holding this with my hand. I have like a knitted hat that I made on display. I used to store all of my yarn in here, but I've since greatly decreased my yarn stash, and so decided to use this instead. So Tolkien, the Silmarillion, Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, and Return of the King is placed somewhere else. An old planner, a vintage planner actually, I scored on eBay for a really sweet deal. Never underestimate the power of eBay. Francine Rivers, she's Christian fiction. I had those for years, but I won't part with them. Kaze Hikaru, when I was a teenager, I was an avid manga reader. I was one of those people, you know, it wasn't cool, but who cares? And I don't really read manga anymore. But if I'm going to read one, it's going to be Kaze Hikaru. It has not been finished in English yet. Of course, Japan was finished way before us, but we're still getting things released. I'm going to be in my 40s by the time this is finished in English. But I'll stick with it because the story is so good. These two cubes here is where I store my TBR for the current month, and then I'm brainstorming the next month. So this is September, this is October. Down here I have cookbooks and knitting instruction books. I also work from home in this room 3 days a week. So here is my fitness trampoline that I have. It's a rebounder, so it's quite, what do you call it? It has a lot of resistance to it that a normal trampoline does not have. You're not supposed to bounce high on these. Though, yeah, this is a workout. I like to hop on that just to get a good sweat during the work day because it's just not good to sit all day and not move. This is my plant, Little Vine. I called him Little Vine. I adopted this from a coworker when she left the department, and he has since grown. He's had some struggles. You can see he's balding, but now he's thriving, and I'm now propagating him. Anyway, let's go over this shelf. So I have here, this is real shady. You're getting straight up, this is not professionally done, but that's not why we're here. This is where I keep ancient literature, ancient Greek and Roman classical literature, ancient Greek and Roman historical texts, and ancient Greek myth retellings is where these are. This isn't, Elodie Harper is ancient Rome, not a Greek myth telling or a Roman myth retellings, but she goes here because it's the right time period. If you have never read Stephen Fry's adaptations of Greek myths, please do. He is hysterical. Here I have some nonfiction at the Existentialist Cafe. I'm not an existentialist, but existentialist narratives and stories and philosophy gives me great joy. So there we go. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, one of the saddest books I've ever read. I'm not a crier, but that book did make me cry. Knitting Yarns, which is a book a friend gave me years ago, just stories about knitting, and you know, it's actually really endearing. Jefferson's Daughters, which is a really, I heard this author speak actually. This is a really interesting book about Thomas Jefferson, but it really also highlights his daughters, and it humanizes Thomas Jefferson in a way that I hadn't seen anybody do yet. And Thomas Jefferson to me is just a really, really fascinating man. By any other name, it's actually a historical and nonfiction book about the history of the roses, and roses are my favorite flower. I know, probably cliche, but here, Blurb Your Enthusiasm. This is basically about blurbs for books and how books are marketed, but in a funny way. Somebody, a publisher or a publishing company or a publicity house sent that to me. I should read it. Some memoirs, Misty Copeland, you know I'm a ballet head. Friendaholic, I have an interest in narratives about relationships and friendships in particular. Another narrative, not a narrative, I'm sorry. Memoir, Crying in H Mart. I like food. This is where I have my Tudor historical fiction. I have yet to read Philippa Gregory. We'll see how I get on with this. This is just for fun because I know she's not necessarily historically accurate. Hilary Mantel, the OG. I have Bring Up the Bodies in a different shelf. I plan to read that soon. Then historical fiction goes down here. Actually, my historical fiction is in chronological order. So I go from ancient Greek and Rome, nonfiction, then Tudor fiction. Here we're going into the Elizabethan period, then to the Regency period, then to Victorian historical fiction, which stops here. This is, okay. My sister likes to send snail mail and she sent me, yeah. Anya Sutton, historical fiction. You can probably tell I love historical fiction. This is historical fiction I read just for funsies, right? You read that at night before you go to sleep. Kate Morton, I've read this, haven't read those. We the Drowned, I plan to read that next year. This is the foot to my clothing rack. Cold Mountain, one of my favorite novels of all time. It's based in the Civil War, but modeled after the Odyssey. So good. I reviewed Verena last year, or maybe early this year. Mediocre. Beautifully written, but boring. So yeah, those. Let's get down here. So as you can see, I went from historical fiction to some more lush historical fiction. This is Danish. And then I went to American historical fiction, more American historical fiction. This is not American, but the author is American. This book, I need to reread it. I don't have any memory of it. I read it during a very stressful time, and I literally have no memory of it. Have not read this yet for some reason. I'm just not drawn to it. I don't know why. Khalid Hosseini, The Kite Runner. I read that when I was 18. So good. Some more historical fiction. Diana Gabaldon, obviously. Outlander. And so actually you can see here, more historical fiction. And then I do this transition here because this is also where Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell sits, right? So I did this transition between historical fiction to historical fiction that starts to play with magical realism, and that's how we get here. So then that drops nicely down into fantasy, which for me right now is just J.R.R. Martin, and I felt that that was a really cool spot to have Beowulf House. And then I go into Asian literature. So I have Pachinko and Free Food for Millionaires, which of course is Korean, a Korean author, Min Jin Lee. And then I go into some of my Japanese fiction. You know, I'm a big fan of Meiko Kawakami. Breasts and Eggs is a beautiful book. It's just so well written. She is a mastermind. Meiko Kawakami's mastery of language is just something. I wish I could read it in Japanese, but I have no Japanese yet. I have a friend who's willing to learn it with me. The Turnout. Oh, this book is so twisted, but I can't resist a ballet narrative, you guys. I just can't. So then from Asian fiction, we are transitioning into contemporary releases that are not historical fiction. So it's just contemporary releases, and all of these are in alphabetical order. I'm not going to go through all of these books. I'm just going to kind of pan through the titles. You know, I'm a big Elif Bottoman fan, especially of The Idiot. Big Swiss. Somebody sent that to me. A company sent that to me. I haven't read it yet. There are a lot of mixed opinions about this book, so we'll see. I think it's a pretty, I don't know. So here we go. More, again, Desert Creatures was sent to me. Haven't read it yet. Yep. All of these are, and by contemporary releases, I mean published in the 1990s or sooner. Maybe, are there some of these 80s? I don't know. My struggle. One day. Is that thunder? I hope so, because you guys, my car is dirty. But she needs soap. She needs soap, not rain water. For contemporary releases, Alice Smith, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna read her. The more reviews I watch, the less interested I am. The covers are absolutely stunning, but at this point in my book collecting, if that's what you want to call it, I'm really not interested in having books in my shelf that I have absolutely no intention of reading or keeping. I don't care how beautiful they are. I don't know if Alice Smith is for me. And the reason why I say that is because Kieran on Katie Books, I trust his opinion. And I feel like based on what he said, I might not get on with her. I might not keep those 2 books. And I stopped at those 2. I haven't even purchased the others. Ooh, this book right here, Where Light Meets Water, is in New Zealand. New release. I have a bookish friend who lives in New Zealand, and she said, Alana, you're gonna love this. So I had this shipped to me by way of Canada from Australia. So there was an eBay seller who ordered it from Australia, and I got it. Then it got shipped to Canada, then it got shipped to the US. It took 2 months, but I have no regrets. Donna Tartt, I'm a big fan of The Secret History, which is why I have 2 copies of it. This copy was a limited edition, really hard to find now, and I definitely paid a pretty penny for it. You know I'm a big fan of Amar Tolls. The man is he's a genius. A Little Life. I need to reread this. This book still lives in my head rent-free. You know what I mean? I need to review it too. It deserves a video review. From here, these are contemporary classics. This is kind of what I'm doing here. So Sex and Rage, Eve Babbitt's, I have Black Swan. Eve Babbitt's is so funny. I have Simone de Beauvoir, Elizabeth Bowen, who I need to read. See, these are what I call classics, but they're post the 1950s. Oh, Fahrenheit 451, so good. Albert Camus, haven't read that one yet. Gatsby, Breakfast at Tiffany's. This book is so underread. So good. So good and really unique. To Kill a Mockingbird. Everybody should read To Kill a Mockingbird, okay? Clarice Lispector, I think she's probably a genius. The woman was rather amazing. Such an amazing, gifted writer. Quite opaque. I think Proust is easier to read than some of her works. I mean that in all seriousness. This is, okay, another one of my sister's cards. This is for my birthday of 2023, actually. I get gifted a lot of things that have alpacas on them because, again, as a knitter, so yeah. Yeah, I thought this card was pretty epic, so I decided to keep it out on display. Nancy Mitford, hilarious. Nancy Mitford, so funny. 1984, another book I think everybody should read. Ooh, Atlas Shrugged. One of my best friends, who lives in the next city over from me, we wanted to buddy read this, but look at this thing. It's a door stopper. I just don't know. I don't know. Francois Sagan. Haven't read this yet, but these are slim volumes. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, one of my favorite classics. One of my favorite books of all time, actually. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, a book I think everybody should read. Slaughterhouse 5. These are my New York Review books. You know, Stoner's one of my favorite books. My Persephone books. This book, Louisa May Alcott. I don't know if I'm going to keep this, to be honest. Somehow I'm just not interested in reading it. I don't know. I might not keep that book. All right. These are bookmarks, so hold on. This is some shaky video. Mary Stewart, another one of those mid-20th century authors that is just kind of fun to read. Especially if I'm not into Agatha Christie. I know, shock horror. I just don't have this urge to read her, but Mary Stewart to me kind of is my Agatha Christie, if that makes sense. I mean, Daphne du Maurier, come on. I have Jamaica Inn, but I plan to reread it soon, which is why it's not here. Excellent Women by Barbara Pym is absolutely hilarious. I have the Virago 40th Anniversary Collection. It's missing 2 of the books. One of them I'm currently reading. The other I plan to reread. Then I have Susan Ferrier. Susan Ferrier was a Scottish author, a contemporary of Jane Austen, and at the time, she actually outsold Jane Austen. This is a book I think people should read. It is so, so funny. And there are 3 aunts in this book that actually pay homage to the 3 witches in Macbeth, which makes sense because in Macbeth, it takes place in Scotland. So it's actually really, really smart. And it's a funny book, and it has great dialect in it. But Taylor, an author, I think is just underread. I think that's Thunder. Or a train or a truck. It doesn't matter. All of Elizabeth Taylor's short stories. Dorothy West, also underread. I haven't read The Richer or the Richer the Poorer yet. This is a short story collection. Jane Austen, one of my friends, also gave me a collection of her letters. I should read that. It won't take me long to get through. The Bronte sisters. This is The Professor, which was Charlotte's best work, but I wanted to have it. This is also a collection of the Bronte's poems. I'm not a big, burping poetry reader, but I will suffer through poetry for the Brontes. And this is a strange look. It's a sprayed edges. I got this at the Strand in New York. And I selected that copy collection just because I hadn't seen anything quite like it. Iris Murdoch, Virginia Woolf. Ooh, Genius in Ink. Virginia Woolf on how to read. This is a collection of essays by Virginia Woolf about reading, and it is a delight. Highly recommend. One of my top reads of 2021. Either 2020 or 2021. That's a treat. Highly recommend. Now I'm going into more classics. We're on to Dune, The Count of Monte Cristo, Swan's Way, Within a Budding Grove, etc. Proust. The Russians. Russian literature is among my favorite. Russian classics, let me say, is just one of my favorite categories of literature. There's just something about big Russian novels that I love. You know, The Brothers Karamazov is one of my favorite books of all time. I can't wait to reread it. Crime and Punishment is uncomfortably relatable. Haven't read The Idiot yet. I'll read that in 2024. Notes from Underground I reviewed this year. Anna Karenina I have read. I get quite a few comments. Oh, have you read Anna Karenina? I think you'd love it. Yes, can confirm. I have read it, and I really did enjoy it. I should reread it. I actually preferred Anna Karenina over War and Peace. War and Peace, speaking of which, is right here and looking haggard as it should. Lolita. Is it weird to say I enjoyed this book? Like, it's gross, don't get me wrong, but this book is genius. This is another one I need to review. I have a review on it, but I want to review it and then follow that. Oh my gosh, you hear my neighbors? Somebody needs to get out their house. They're waiting on you. Okay. Review it. Okay. Review it and then follow that up immediately with The Little Life, because I think that you can have a conversation about both of those books. Then I have Russian short stories. Dostoevsky, Gadsnazov. That's not a short story, but it is a small, it is a small novel. Gogol, Tiffy, another one that is underread. Subtly Worded. It's a collection of short stories. She even met Rasputin. That's definitely Thunder. And Tolstoy. Here in this little corner, I have books that I finished reading and need to review. I DNF'd this. Yeah, it was a struggle. But these are books that I need to review. Down here, I'm playing around with books that I am going to be reading next. So before I would say December 31st, I want to finish rereading The Lord of the Rings and read The Goldfinch for the first time. I actually DNF'd The Goldfinch in 2014. I don't think it was the right book for me at the time. And I read very differently 9 years ago. And then more books I want to read here. Oh my gosh, this person is frustrated. Why don't you call them? Like, call them. Stop honking and pick up the phone. All right. Okay, Ross Poldark is one of my favorite books. This book is so good. So good. Okay. And then right here in this corner, books coming up that I want to read. that were books coming up that I want to read, that I want to keep on my bedside table to read before bed. I want to reread Jamaica Inn because that book is wild. And Anne Boleyn, because off with her head, right? That story never gets boring. Say hello to my collection of dance shoes. Why are they so expensive? I kid you not. These cost $120 without ribbons and elastics and toe pads. $45, and it's literally cardboard and leather. And I got these for Christmas for my parents because I didn't want to pay for them myself. Those are my tap shoes. All right, this is my other bookshelf. This lives in my living room because I like having these books on display in the living room. This is actually my mother's bookshelf. I just never gave it back. It's a nice bookshelf. I had to turn the light on. As you can hear, there is thunder. It's gonna storm, so it got pretty dark. These are all gifts from a friend of mine. She gave that to me one year for Christmas because she was like, this is so you, and it is. What would Jane do? And these are actually real flowers that have been preserved in a way so they'll last years. And again, they're mini roses, which was very thoughtful. All right, this is where I house a lot of my other classics. So I have some Alma Publishing classics here. Okay, I know I said I'm not an Agatha Christie fan, but bear with me. There's only one reason why I purchased this edition, Vintage 70s Cricket House, because it has a black point shoe on it. I mean, come on. Is that not pulp fiction? I love it. It's the only reason why I purchased that. So I have The Italian by Anne Radcliffe, The Last of the Mohegans. Agnes Grey, loved it. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, loved it. Here are my Shakespeares. I've read most of these. I've read all of these. I have yet to read Antony and Cleopatra and Othello. Julius Caesar and Macbeth. I love Macbeth. It is a fabulous play. And Julius Caesar. Read those in high school, and I will reread them for the rest of my life. I have reread them since. So here are my Penguin English Library. Some of these are not quite in order because when I was shifting books around, I somehow mixed up the order and left it that way because I'm just not that much of a stickler. I have Sanditon, boring. I said what I said, but it's Jane Austen's, I'll keep it. Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. This was, I snagged this before it was just impossible to get. A lot of these Penguin English libraries are now out of print, like Evelina. Haven't read this one yet. Loved this one. My Dickens. My guy, my boy Chuck. David Copperfield is such a treat. Bleak House is amazing. Haven't read Great Expectations. I should reread this. I feel like I didn't appreciate it enough the first time. Another alpaca that my sister gave me. An alpaca my mother gave me. His name is Alfonso. I named him Alfonso. He is actually made from authentic alpaca hair from a Peruvian alpaca. My mother purchased this for me, I believe, at the Native American History Museum in DC, Washington, DC. I've got some George Eliot here. It's a little dark, I apologize. Let me pull this out so you can see it. Daniel Deronda, I've heard this is pretty good. Mill and the Floss, haven't read it. I have read Middlemarch, Howard's End, so good. My Elizabeth Gaskell's, haven't read this yet. I have read these. This one I need to read, New Grub Street. This one is hard, this edition is out of print. Thomas Hardy, I have read Far from the Mighty Crowd, absolutely fantastic. Haven't read it. Have read it. Haven't read it. I purchased this one because I was about to miss out. It's now out of print. Portrait of a Lady, Henry James. Haven't read those. I'm scared of him, I admit. I think this is spilled tea, to be honest. Vanity Fair. These are my Anthony Trollops. Do you hear that rain? More Henry James, he's out of order. Frankenstein. I have read it. Not my favorite. I loved the monster, but other than that, Dr. Frankenstein was a pain in the butt. Dracula, hilarious to me. More Anthony Trollope again. These are clearly out of order. These are the last of them, actually. So I've got some Mark Twain here. I have read this. I should reread it. Sorry. I have read this. I want to reread it. Oh, Picture of Dorian Gray. Love it. The Odyssey, one of my favorites. Another copy of Jane Eyre. You can never have too much. These are my cloth-bound my Penguin cloth-bound classics. So more Bronte sisters. Villette is absolutely fantastic. If you are a Jane Eyre fan, Charlotte Bronte fan, this is a must-read. A Tale of Two Cities is one of my favorite books of all time. The ending is immaculate, and the beginning is just iconic. Madame Bovary, this is a book I should reread. I didn't dislike it. I think I gave it a 4 when I read it the first time, but I think, you know, as I continue to mature as a reader, I think I would appreciate it more, you know, 4 to 5 years later. Another edition of The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a slightly abridged version, but look at the cover. That was a cover buy. Also massive. The Three Musketeers have yet to read. Moby Dick I plan to read in 2024, and Les Mis, which terrifies me. Haven't read it. That's that. Old school YouTube, right? Just shaky camera on the phone. I just wanted to get this done really quickly. And that is all. Let me know if you've read any of these down below, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, look, Christmas decorations.